The city of Tbilisi, and certainly the nation of Georgia, is not burning in any way. Let's discuss what's going on. I live a few blocks from Parliament. I am from the US, staying here for 5 or 6 months temporarily. It's a Saturday morning in front of the Parliamentary building. You could see chaos abounds. This is the afternoon. This is an afternoon in front of the Parliament during the week. It's around 6 p.m. Traffic is moving smoothly, and people are leaving the Parliament building with no problems. What's going on is somewhere between 6 and 7 o'clock at night, these protesters show up. At night, when most people are at home. Certainly the members of Parliament are gone. They are at home, having dinner with their spouses, or going out to eat at some restaurants. Several nights when the protests were going on, I was just a few blocks away having a beer. No problem. The city was running smoothly. These protests are not shutting down the city, and they are not taking place nationwide. These protesters lay their misplaced anger at the police who didn't vote to delay the joining of the EU or pass the Foreign Registration Act. The police had nothing to do with it. They are being violently attacked for doing their job. And don't buy anybody that tells you these are peaceful protests. That is absolute bullshit. These fireworks that they are firing can easily take out a police officer's eye or severely injure him in many other ways. As far as I'm concerned, every single protester out there who fires one of these things should be put in prison for assaulting a police officer. But let's talk about what they want. They want to join the EU. The EU is an authoritative, non-democratic institution. Members of the EU Parliament can do nothing. They can't propose legislation or anything of the sorts. They get like 30 seconds or less to blow off their mouth, and that's pretty much the pinnacle of their power, to be able to shout and scream for 30 seconds on the plenary. And Georgia must be prepared to take in hundreds of thousands of immigrants from the Middle East, most of these, of course, being young males. As we've seen from virtually everywhere, from London to Germany to Australia, every single European nation and every Western nation is having their crime skyrocket due to this immigration. Be prepared for so-called grooming gangs, an absolutely insulting word for rapist coming into your country.
Finally, 7 years later and after 11 months of court cases, this gang of 20 men are in prison for what they did. The last 4 of them sentenced today. Mohammed Akram, 17 years for the trafficking and rape of 2 girls. Niaz Ahmed, 5 years for inciting a child to commit a sexual offence and sexual assault. Mohammed Imran Ibra, 3 years for trafficking and actual bodily harm. And Asif Bashir, 11 years for rape and attempted rape. Many of the details of what these men did to their victims are so disturbing, we simply can't report them. In summing up today, the judge said it's likely that these girls will never recover from the abuse they have suffered. The way you treated them defies understanding, and yet, he went on to say, none of you have expressed any remorse for what you did.
And the Christmas displays that go up all over Georgia, all the lights around all the squares, such as Freedom Square or Liberty Square, whatever you want to call it, be prepared for those to go away. In Germany, London, Australia, you name it, they are already warning people, be careful at Christmas markets. Some places they are advising them not to go. because of the threats of Islamic terrorists. Some places are even trying to shut them down. Britain now has an Islamic phobia month. Where's the Christian phobia month? Or the Sikh phobia month? Or the Hindi phobia month? Or the Buddhist phobia month? It's just odd that the most violent religion gets a phobia month. Why is that? And are talking about blasphemy laws. Are we back in the 16th century blasphemy laws? The money that you get from the EU will be spent on law enforcement, psychological services, and aid to rape victims and other victims of crime. The politicians, of course, try to sucker the people into joining because they love the EU. Just ask Donald Tusk, the Prime Minister of Poland. He was a president of the EU and received around $300,000, up from the around 60,000 he made as a Prime Minister of Poland when he was first the Prime Minister. But of course, there is a president of the EU, a president of the Parliament, a president of the EU Commission, whatever, the EU Council, a president of everything. And there are also like 14 vice presidents. Gee, America has one president and one vice president. Somehow the European needs multiple presidents and, of course, over a half a dozen vice presidents. One of the vice presidents recently, of course, was found with hundreds of thousands of dollars in cash. She still has not been prosecuted. The EU didn't even have proper rules for accepting gifts until 2023. The EU machine is just a bank for politicians. The EU has never really had a proper audit. And any time an auditor actually tries to do their job, they're fired. They refuse to allow the people to actually do a proper audit on what goes on behind that corruption machine. So, Georgia, if you join the EU, be prepared to kiss your country goodbye and say goodbye to Christian values. I understand the allure for EU money and the freedom of travel sounds good, but the price is the destruction of your country. The EU destroys everything it touches. I also understand about the Foreign Registrations Act. I have problems with it as well. Even in America, they haven't come up with a proper method to say, hey, if the New York Times is getting, a half of their budget from a foreign source, I think Americans should know that. Of course, the New York Times is not getting that money from a foreign government. I'm just giving that as an example. I think one should know where funding comes from other nations. All over the world, there's problems with the Chinese institutes. They say they're a cultural phenomenon, therefore not subjugated to the law. That's not a cultural phenomenon. It's a China propaganda machine sent here to look after and intimidate their own people. If you like these little rants, please hit the like button and subscribe. Thanks for listening.